Hi, this is Henry Chamberlain, and it's my honor to have Joe Sacco, one of our great cartoonists here, and he's going to chat about his new book, The Once and Future Riot. For all of you out there, many of you already know his landmark work, Palestine, Footnotes in Gaza, more recently, Paying the Land. Today, we're going to focus on The Once and Future Riot. Thanks so much, Joe, for spending some time with me.
My pleasure, Henry.
Okay, so I was thinking, should I just cut to Joe and have him do an elevator pitch, or should I test myself? Because I sometimes I come across a book that's so cool and impressive, and I feel like I should already know some of this information, and can I convey it to the public? But my elevator pitch would be, it's an exploration of communal hatred, with the example being the 2013 riot in uh, Uttar Pradesh. Does that sound like I'm on the right track?
Yeah, you're hired. You're hired as my press agent. That's good. Yeah. It's it, it- the riot took place in 2013 in Uttar Pradesh and the in a few districts. And I went there about a year later. And yeah, it's a look at communal violence, but I've done a lot of work about violence and I was looking for something different. So originally, I thought I'd like to talk to people and see what they say about what happened and see what narratives they put forward about what was going on. So that's how the book kind of got started was what do people um, make of what their role was in this riot? And then, of course, people begin to create narratives that may or may not be true. And the journalism part is um, finding out what the facts are and then putting that alongside what the narratives are. That was the original idea for the book.
Well, I'm still going to ask question two because you've already answered it, but I'm wondering what else can you tell us about what led to you doing this book? What was it about that region, or was it like this was so? It's like it like it's a no-brainer for you to just go with this project?
No, not I wouldn't call it a no-brainer. I'm thinking about the world and slowly the West is declining. And nations like India and China are, for good or for bad, they're going to be the future. And that's quite a considerable part of the world's population. India has more than a billion people in it. And it's a democracy, or it calls itself a democracy. So how does that work? Um, a democracy that large, how does it function? And what's going on? Because there are many sectarian problems, as there are in many places in the world, including the United States. But over there, you see things in relief. There certain things are going on all over the place, but in India, it's more visceral. So it's a good way of exploring certain issues.
That makes sense to me. I am imagining we're in a coffee shop and you're trying to explain to me what's going on, and I'm like admitting to you right now, India's so I've always like let's say Brazil, like what's going on in Brazil, what's going on in India over the years as a young person, but India has not been on my radar, and it's becoming more important to everyday folks like me who ignoramuses or people who are so busy. We live in such a distracted world, but India, we hear it more in the news. It can't be denied. So am I on the right track in saying
Yeah,
these
yeah. I
things?
mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a major player. It probably should have a seat on the Security Council if you're going to talk about geopolitics. It's a very important country. And also I actually just genuinely like India. There's so many things about it. Um, it's it's got a lot of depth, a lot of cultures, and I've spent I've been there 3 times and I'm only scratching the surface of the surface. That's how I feel when I think about India.
Now let's talk a little bit about the background of what is modern day India. It was cut up. The colonial powers that be, the English relented, finally gave up India. It was split up. Pakistan mostly Muslim, India mostly Hindu. But then there's the Hindu Muslim dynamic in India, and there's this splintering off of these two groups. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, after the partition, a lot of Muslims remained in India. I mean, many crossed the border into Pakistan. Many Hindus came across the border from what is now Pakistan into India. There was an exchange of populations, basically, and a lot of people were killed in the violence that took place. But a lot of Muslims remained in India. It's either the first or second most largest Muslim population in the world. It's 14, now it's about 15% of the population, so it's a significant minority. We're talking over 200 million Muslims in India. So, um, India started out as to make a long story short, as a secular, more or less a secular nation. But over time, that's eroded. Um, my contention is that certain parties, certain nationalists, Hindu nationalists in this particular case, um, to shore up their base and to promote their agenda, they caused friction with the Muslims. And you began to see that especially in the 1990s. There's a famous mosque in Uttar Pradesh, very famous uh, old mosque from the Mughal era that was destroyed by Hindu nationalists who believed that Ram, the god Ram, had a relationship there. He had come out of he had been on the ground there at some point. And so what's happened over time, I mean, that was a very contentious thing that happened, and violence broke out between Muslims and Hindus starting then, and it's continued over time. And um, now a major Hindu temple has been built on that very site. So, um, you know, the dynamic is basically you have people from one sectarian group, especially politicians, um, using violence, I think, to around the time of election cycles to solidify their base and to keep um, yeah, I'm not explaining this very well. I'm sorry.
No,
This is probably one of the first interviews I've done about the book, so I'm a
I,
little
I'm that's right in my notes. So yes, I will circle back to that. I'm sorry, did you want to finish your thought
No,
there?
no, it's okay. It's okay. I think you can probably edit it out at that part of it.
Sure, unless we keep moving, I think we will be fine. I was thinking, what can I highlight from the book? And then there was some things that I thought, oh, maybe this is too on the nose or too obvious, but maybe sometimes those are the most vital things to bring up to folks, especially people coming in from the cold who aren't familiar at all with the work. I'm thinking some universal truths, like this woman's being interviewed, and she says, uh, "Why is it that she can't have a fair shot at things?" And basically, she's saying they know rich people can do anything. They are the rich people. We are the poor people. So there's a lot of just universal truths that. Well, I hate to get into American politics, but this crosses over to any country's uh, political turmoil. Am I correct to say that?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, when we're talking about this specific riot, there's a component that comes out. I mean, every riot has different dynamics. In this particular case, um, there were the Hindu group that we're mostly talking about are Jats. They're mostly landowners, and most of their labor almost all their labor are poor Muslims. And the initial conflict was really between, let's say, middle class Muslims and the Jats. But what the Jats turned on their own labor, the poorest of the Muslims. But she is talking about a very um, common dynamic in that it's the poor people that are overrun, that have no voice and have no power in almost any situation. The ones that are going to be most taken advantage of. I mean, in this particular riot, the poor Muslims had nothing, really nothing to do with the initial violence, but they're the ones who ended up suffering.
Exactly. Yeah, I have my notes here. The Muslims, the dynamics of what led it up to the riot. The Muslim factions attacked the Jats, then the Jats attacked the Muslims, and then or the Muslims that are attacked are the rural field workers who had nothing to do with the argument.
Right, but they were the people who were there at the moment when
Yeah.
passions were the hottest.
Yes.
And so they are the ones they make up the vast majority of the casualties, and many thousands of them fled their villages.
Let me move on to two other on the nose scenes from the book. Like here, I believe this is a chat journalist. I might be mistaken, but he's explaining that there's no way for there to be a middle if there's these extremes. He says, but if something happens, you will find no one left. If something happens, you will find no one left in the middle because you'll have the polarity, the extremes. And that, of course, comes back to the US or other countries. What thoughts come to mind with that?
Well, it's surprisingly easy to stoke violence, it seems. Most people want to go about their lives, and these two gentlemen, one's, as you mentioned, a Jat journalist, and the other was a Muslim who was, let's say, relatively well off, and they seemed to get along quite well. And he talked about this Jat journalist talked about that, how, actually most of us are pretty much in the middle. People um, often can get along just fine, but some like he said, if something happens, if there's an incident, and if that incident is exploited, particularly by politicians, then extremism is comes to the fore. People get afraid, and they tend to, uh, you know, go to their go to their group, sort of go to the bosom of their group.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to just keep going with another moment that is on the nose. Oh, right here. Now, I'm not sure that this cleric is actually on on the right side of the truth, but he's making the point. You start telling a lie again and again, and make it the truth, and he's blaming the media wholeheartedly for the tensions, the violence, and the truth. The lie becomes the truth. So that is true, but then there's the other layers of to the argument. Do you want to finish my rambling right there?
No, well, I mean, I thought he was right on the money. He was talking about a accusation that's often made by Hindu nationalists about something called love jihad,
Okay, yes.
where basically young Muslim men will entrap Hindu girls, get them pregnant, and then they'll have a child which they'll raise as a Muslim. And it's pretty much a bogus accusation, but it's repeated over and over again. And if you keep repeating this, as he said, as you keep repeating the lie, people begin to sort of pick up on it. And then a lot of things that would probably be considered relatively incident can be seen through the filter of that lie. So if you see a Muslim boy talking to a Hindu girl, if you've heard this lie over and over, you're not thinking, oh, there's just these two kids are talking to each other. It's, this is a example of the love jihad. So, and
Yeah.
I think he is right. I mean, you see in our country too, we no longer um, have a common narrative. The common narrative might have had its own problems, but I can remember a time when, most of us tuned into the same newscasts. There were just, a few stations and you listen to them. And of course, as I say, that has problems. Um, and there's a lot to be said for having a diversity of sources. I think it's absolutely crucial. But one of the problems is that there's no clear sort of common way of thinking about things or viewing certain things. And I mean, that's definitely a problem here.
Well, not to get on a tangent, but yeah, because we're about the same vintage, and I think of Walter Cronkite, and I think about how there was a sense of propriety that we've completely lost. Uh, Anything goes these days, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it used to be that Walter Cronkite could shame the president of the United States. LBJ said, "If I don't have Cronkite, I've lost." And
and he's
you don't have that anymore.
no, that's absolutely right. And when Cronkite basically began to question the Vietnam War, I think that had an impact. I mean, obviously, because a lot of people were already, you know, were questioning the war, but when someone like Cronkite questioned it, um, it had a big impact on, basically middle America. And now, of course, since the advent of organizations like Fox News, MSNBC, it seems like media organizations are sort of carving off their territory rather than coming up with something that uh, coming concentrating on the facts have become much more partisan. You can't really, I can't think of any news site I would turn to and not be able to tell you what their political perspective is. And in a lot of ways, that can be okay. I mean, I go to a lot of people who are left wingers, and I know it's a left wing viewpoint. And every now and then what's Tucker Carlson saying about this now? I want to get that viewpoint, whether I agree with it or not. But it's very difficult to find a news source that I'd say, I'm just going to listen to this news source because I think they're just presenting the facts. That
Exactly. Yeah.
that doesn't really happen anymore. Or anyway, if it did happen, if it's whether it's a bogus assumption or not, we imagined it happening. But now it's about narratives. It's about you listen to a certain thing, you sort of brand yourself by a listener of a certain thing. Um, and that has, I mean, it has great problems. And now we're at the point where um, it's not just having a different narrative, it's like controlling the platforms that provide the narratives. That's what we're seeing now with the sale of TikTok, getting it out of the hands of the Chinese and now selling it to a certain individual, obviously has certain viewpoints. So it goes beyond even just having different narratives. Now, can you control the entire platform? Can X decide, Twitter, decide who is going to be, who can be, posting on X and who cannot? That's another sort of level of controlling narrative. It's not just differing narratives. It's now controlling completely the narrative.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, but let me get back to the book. And I just going through my notes. I'll just read this part. Democracy is no guarantee of a happy coexistence among the nation's people. So what will it take for further stability? And I think the answer you seem to suggest is consistent and reliable leadership from the government.
You think that's my answer?
Well, that's what I seem. It seemed to me that's what I was reading from it. That if there was a consistent, reliable, honest government, that would go a long way to resolving a lot of issues.
Well, I think if you have a government that actually cared for the people and not just certain groups of the people, in other words, that a government that wasn't thinking in terms of who are the Hindu nationalists and what do they want from me and how can I provide that and who can I antagonize that will give me more support from the Hindu nationalists. Um, if you had a government that thought of the whole and what the different groups need different things, how you can, it's very difficult to do, I think, in a nation of more than 1 billion people. But if a government put more of its effort into that, that probably would be less sectarian violence. There's always going to be frictions between people, people of different races, people of different religions. I think we're never going to get rid of that. But a government should be to their, I think, part of the important responsibility of a government is to keep as much of that together as possible. But I mean, if you look at our government now, it's obviously decided that we're a Christian nation, and certain things are un-American, certain things are traditional values. There are certain things that the founders decided upon, and we should not veer away from, and that's always a matter of interpretation. And you see the same dynamic. You don't see a government that's trying to uh, keep people together and work in what you could, I mean, vaguely term the common interests. There are common interests. They're generally economic.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the case of India, there are poor Hindus, there are Dalits who are even outside of the caste system of the Hindu religion. There are poor Muslims. They should have common interests.
Well, as you point out, there's basically two parties in India. One is leaning or strongly for Jats, and the other one's for the Muslims, just doing what's in the interest of the Muslims. The other just doing what's in the interest of the Jats.
Right. And I mean, the sort of the genesis of that riot was an incident. There are always incidents. There's always someone killing someone, but at some point you can, if it crosses communal lines, in other words, if it's between Hindus and Muslims, you can either say, well, that was just violence between some individuals, or you can say, well, that's violence between a Hindu and a Muslim, or a Muslim and a Hindu, or whatever it is. And that's what happened in this case. And as many people told me, if a police investigation had just been allowed to go forward, then probably nothing would have come out of an incident of murder, sort of double murders, two Jat boys getting killed and one Muslim boy getting killed. If a police investigation had just been allowed to run its course, it would have worked out. But the state government in Uttar Pradesh at the time, a lot of it wasn't a Muslim party, but Muslims were a big part of its voter bloc. So to not antagonize the Muslims or to give them sort of a favor, it basically just it stopped the more or less stopped the investigation when it was going ahead and released Muslims who'd been implicated in the killing of the Jat boys. So it when I'm talking about these things, I'm often talking about Hindu nationalists, but even there's way Hindus were also antagonized in this particular case. And it's
Uh,
it's political parties that are doing this sort of thing, really. Politicians.
well, when you have a breakdown in authority where you can't trust the people in power, everything goes to hell. And that's what's happening. Not to I, not to get it to where we're leaning so to the left or anything, but we are in trouble right now, to put it mildly. And once the standards are eroded, once they're gone, where are we heading?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, where are we heading? I can't answer that, but there does seem to be some writing on the wall. Um, it seems like our administration is has decided it's going to go after certain people, and certain groups and certain ways of thinking. That seems quite clear. There seems to be a project to consolidate power. And I mean, if you really want to project it, you could say, well, consolidate power so that whatever happens in the next midterm or the next general election, it'll be a foregone conclusion. It'll be a conclusion that they want because they would have eliminated a lot of the opposition. I think that's the moment we're in the United States. I don't know if it'll be successful, but I think there's an attempt to um, retain power. One group of people, this particular administration wants to retain power, and the people behind the administration. I mean, I personally don't think Trump has the brains to think this through, or he's just sort of the bull in the china shop that destroys things, and then the brains behind him they've got a plan. I mean, groups like the Heritage Foundation, Christian groups, Project 2025. I mean, all this sort of thing. It's the outlines have been sort of made clear.
Well, I think what you're saying is very even-handed, very not controversial. And I look back at the pieces you did for in the Comics Journal with Biden, and the only thing I was thinking, oh no, is this going to be like a Ralph Nader moment, and we're going to lose? The Democrats are going to lose, but uh, and that was before we knew that maybe Kamala was going to step in. But what was said in those pieces, in hindsight, not not particularly controversial, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the country's been on the wrong track for a long time, not just because of Trump. I mean, I think the from my point of view, um, I'm I prefer a very democratic, and I mean democratic with a small d, uh, a very democratic system of government where people have more of a say and where people's needs are met. And I don't think the needs of the people have been met, and that slowly eroded confidence in government and made it possible for a moment for a demagogue like Trump to come forward. But I think it's been a long process.
Yes,
And the Democrats with a big D, the Democratic Party, I don't think has done a particularly good job of giving the people what they want, really. Every now and then there's something thrown, but it seems to come with a lot of caveats. And when you had someone like Biden, who didn't seem to listen at all to what most of the people wanted, and for example, I think most of the people did not want the war in Gaza to go forward the way it was going forward. They didn't want, at the very least, I think most people just wanted America not to provide the weapons that were facilitating a genocide. I think he disappointed a lot of people. And, there were a lot of people in a position, are we going to vote for Biden or then Kamala Harris, who said she supported Biden's stand on what was going on? Are we going to vote for people who want genocide? Yeah, well, there's Trump also, and Trump probably will continue the genocide. So then, it's always we're always in this position of voting for the lesser of two evils. And
yes,
that's I mean, people sort of shrug their shoulders and just say that's the way it is. And I mean, in a lot of ways that is the way it is, but we have to take a step back and really examine what's going on. And to me, it's like, people get to this level of power where they seem completely, it doesn't matter what happens to 100,000 people or 1 million people as long as they are retaining power. I mean, I think when the systems get so big, I mean, I have like other theories that go beyond even American politics about what has happened evolutionarily. You know, 10,000 years ago, we were little hunter-gatherer groups 40, 50 people, and now there are countries of 1 billion people. In our case, it's 350 million or whatever it is. That's an astonishing large amount of people. And the idea that someone is going to take the reins of a country of that size seems absurd on its face. I mean, honestly, I won't say it definitively for all politicians, but you'd almost have to be a sociopath to get that far where you actually get to that level. I mean, I
Yes.
think a lot of people start out maybe with the right intentions, but over time, to retain power, to play the game, I think they begin to exhibit kind of sociopathic tendencies. You begin to throw people under the bus, and it becomes very utilitarian. Okay, well, these 500 people will suffer, but these 5,000 people will vote for me. It's
Yeah.
almost set up to change the brain function of some of those people. So I think there's an even wider issue than what's going on in America or India or whatever it is.
Well, I guess at the level you're talking about, we're not going to live to see the solution. It's going to be generations from now. Or-
Yeah, maybe not, maybe not, but it's just a matter of, yeah, I'm not, it's sobering to think about. I mean, no doubt about it. But I'd rather look at things realistically and begin to think of people realistically, think of what they're doing. I mean, is Stephen Miller, is that a normal human being? Is he a
Exactly.
normal human being? I mean, is Donald Trump a normal human being? Honestly, it was Joe Biden a normal human being. I think with power comes mental illness.
Yes. Well,
It's not always the case. I mean, I can think of a few politicians here and there that seem a little truer to something else. Let's say someone like, for whatever, I'm not 100% behind the guy, but um, Bernie Sanders, for example, he doesn't seem psychopathic. He didn't seem to be wanting to hang on to power that much in a certain way. In some ways, I wish he had a bit of that killer
mhm.
instinct. But there are politicians I can think of along the way that I can't see fitting quite in this. But a lot of them don't seem to be even ideologues. They just seem to want to keep going forward.
Well, I know that there's some problems with Obama, but I would be happy with him as high on the list of good even-minded presidents.
Oh yeah, I mean the guy was absolutely, he had a better manner. It was much more comfortable to be in this country with someone like Obama. But even he, yeah, I don't know if I'd call him a sociopath. I don't know. But even he seemed to make certain decisions uh, that were pretty questionable. Like, uh, what was the guy's name? Al-Awlaki. Uh, he was a cleric. He was an American citizen, and he was killed in by U.S. drones in Yemen with his son. I mean, it was sort of an extrajudicial killing of an American citizen, and it broke a precedent. I mean, maybe this is the kind of thing people in power have to do. Maybe someone has to make these decisions. But I don't know. I have my doubts about all of them, frankly.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole we could go on
Yeah,
for a long
we could.
time.
We could.
You did the book collaborating. I can't remember now the name of the writer. Uh, very. It's a book that you focus on the American political scene.
Oh, Chris Hedges.
Yes, Chris Hedges. Do you see yourself doing something like that again? Maybe where you just go in as a comics journalist, or is that too close to home? Or
No, it's not too close to home. Um, I'm actually working with Chris on a book about Gaza right now. But
oh,
I mean, to be honest, I want to get away from journalism. I would rather, I mean, I'm just at a point where, and the book we're doing is a journalism book, but I think if I did anything, it would be something along the lines of the war on Gaza, sort of a political pamphlet. I can definitely see commenting on what's going on in America. I mean, I have a lot of ideas, but I don't know if I want to do any more reporting, mainly because I'm sort of tired of drawing that way. I'm sort of tired of trying to draw things realistically and suffering for it. And I just need another way of approaching things. I actually like doing the reporting. I really like talking to people. I like going out and finding them out, but to spend months and months drawing a particular scene or a particular architecture, which I do all the time, it sort of worn me down. And I've wanted to get away from some of that and just do something else, frankly, creatively speaking.
Well, your current book certainly has a universal tone to it, where it speaks to what's going on today, even if you didn't intend for that to be the case.
Yeah, I wasn't, when I was doing it, I wasn't sure. But then as I was there, I did start thinking about democracy. And I just started thinking about, well, why is it sometimes, I guess, what is the relationship between violence and electoral politics? That became sort of a bigger question for me when I was there. And I wonder about it now.
Well, that's such a powder keg of a of a topic to get into. I want to let you have the last word. Did I miss something that you wanted to say about the new book, the Once and Future Riot?
No, I don't think you did. Uh, it was, for me, it was a book really worth doing because it made me think a lot about democracy. So much so that I started reading about the ancient Greeks. I talked to a professor at Cambridge. I went up to see him 3 times in the UK, and I'd like to actually write about and write and draw about this, but the book really made me sort of have other thoughts that I'd like to develop in a more sort of philosophical way, you know. So it might be like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the last major journalism book I've done, but it was intended to be. So anyway, I got a lot of ideas from it.
Well, I'm thinking, who am I to give advice to Joe Sacco? But
I don't mind advice. I don't mind
I
advice.
wonder if it's a time-consuming element that makes you go, oh, I don't know if I can, like you just said, if there were a way to make it less time-consuming, maybe if you were to lean in more on in prose and have just some illustrated vignettes. But you've done that with Chris Hedges, so that's the only way I can think to. There's other ways too, as I'm sure you know, to cut the time-consuming element. But you're going to do what you need to do, of course.
Yeah, I mean the thing is it's I still think it's worthwhile doing journalism, and if I had another parallel clone of myself, I'd probably just
Hmm.
continue because I think there's a lot to explore. But there is, like I mentioned, there's a part of me that has some other creative ambitions, and I'm at that age now that if I don't start really getting to them, I'll miss them, and I would regret that, I think.
Yes. Well, you have a very wonderful time ahead because you get to map it out how you want it to be. So, but the book is The Once and Future Riot. And I encourage everyone to grab it.
Well, thank you, Henry.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe.
All right.